Okay, hello everybody. If I could have your undivided attention, please, so we can make a start. So everybody, please take a seat. And I'm very loud. Not very loud. Is that better? Cool. Right. Okay. So hello everybody, and welcome to this year's Troublemakers at Work conference. Your conference, a conference for everybody who makes trouble at work. I'm Sally Heier. I'm one of the coordinators at Troublemakers at Work, and my current place of troublemaking is higher education at the University of Leeds. And I think it's fair to say that I have three of the prime troublemakers at the moment here with me. So we have Jenny Black, a UNISON branch secretary and NEC member, who played a key role in developing and delivering UNISON's trans equality campaign. We have Stephen, a striking bin worker from Birmingham. Yeah. Stephen and his comrades have been striking since March against Birmingham City Council after their decision of salary cuts of up to £8,000 annually and workers losing out on pay progression. And we have next to me Dr. Becky Lavelle, a member of the British Medical Association, currently in dispute with the Labour government over pay, as the government has failed to follow through on the 2024 pay deal. Becky represents resident doctors across the UK. Resident doctors is any doctor who is not a consultant, specialist, or GP. So that is around 70,000 doctors. And as you may have heard, they had their first day of strike action yesterday. So this year so far has made clear that we do need to continue to fight for pay and conditions. And we have also seen how our resistance in the workplace is connected to wider struggles and wider issues, which are then reflected at the place where we work. I have done the online social media accounts of troublemakers at work, and I have read a lot of Facebook comments saying to us that we as trade unionists are losing our way and that we should only focus on pay and conditions and the bread and butter issues. However, that is very much not the vision of this conference, and it's not what we as an organization stand for, because we know that workers' lives are affected by more than just pays and condition. The lives of workers are shaped by climate change, which disproportionately affects working people, because after all, we working people are the ones who have to turn up to work in heat waves when regulations say you cannot transport cattle in temperatures over 30 degrees Celsius, yet no one seems to think of regulations for us when it is safe to go to work. Workers' lives are affected by the violence in Palestine, which is playing out in front of our eyes and which is supported by the UK government. To suggest that working people can only focus on their own life and their own dignity while seeing the starvation of the Palestinian people is quite frankly absurd. Workers' lives are also shaped by division, and I would very much like to emphasize here that an injury to one is an injury to all. The attacks we are seeing on trans people, on disabled people, on migrants, the dehumanization of entire groups must be unacceptable because this dehumanization is rooted in a strategy to first divide workers and then eradicate our rights. Divide and conquer is not a new strategy in union busting, and the notorious union buster Martin J. Levitt openly stated in his work that in the 1970s, his primary strategy to bust unions was to spread the rumor that the union supporters were gay. And he said that was a very effective strategy because it was very effective in blue-collar towns, because it removed these workers from their communities and it removed them from support. The Labour government is currently using a strategy of dividing workers through austerity, trying to play out the vast majority against each other while protecting bosses and billionaires who actually make decisions that harm us. It's against those people that we have to make trouble while building true solidarity from below, being inclusive and supporting each other in our struggles. To do that, we need to ramp up workplace resistance against the dominant narratives by Labour, the Tories, and Reform. That the new party by Sultana and Corbyn has gathered more sign-ups within 24 hours of launching than Reform membership is a sign that people are willing to resist. And while the new party will be an important point of debate within our movement, parliamentary politics is limited if it's not carried by a working class movement that is building power from below. This is the idea behind this conference and Troublemakers at Work. Our point of view of unions is the grassroots workers, the rank and file. We focus on building workers' own collective power and democratic control of our unions. And our focus is making trouble at work, but we also recognize that our lives and issues don't start and end when we stop being paid, and neither should our solidarity. We expect this conference to be a space to build this solidarity, a space free from bullying and harassment. If you experience any inappropriate behavior, please see our behavior statement on page 13 to find out how to report such behavior so that we can take action and ensure that this is a space where workers can connect and build solidarity. Our aim today is to connect people and support efforts to create rank and file groups in particular industries or unions. And to do that, we will have breakouts by industry after we heard from our speakers. We also encourage note-taking during the day because at the closing plenary, we'll have actionable insights that you can take home and to your workplace to build the resistance in your workplace. And I also encourage you to have a look at the program, at the sessions that we'll have, and to decide which sessions today are the most useful to help you to organize at work. Thank you. Ta. Now, let's hear from Jenny first.
Thank you, Sally. Morning, everyone. Sorry, I can't resist doing things like that when I've got a mic in my hand. And it didn't go unnoticed that my comrades here left and right got a round of applause this morning, but I didn't. But and again, I'm not an attention seeker, but thank you very much. No, thank you very much for having me here this morning. It's events like this, I think, are really, really important. They're really important for making people aware of some of the bigger issues or some of the more diverse issues that are taking place within society and the trade union movement. As Sally mentioned in the intro, I'm a member of UNISON. I'm a branch secretary at UNISON North Tyneside Local Government. I'm a trans woman and I'm a member of UNISON's NEC. So I need to stress to you all today that I'm here speaking in a personal capacity because I've got the last 2 years on the NEC and the odds are not stacked in my favour because of the way I conduct myself, which you'll find out about in a minute. So I used to be a lifelong Labour supporter, Labour voter. I can't imagine myself ever voting Labour again in my lifetime. As a trans activist, I hate that phrase because I'm a trade unionist and I've been labelled as a trans activist, although if I only done trans stuff, my branch would get really annoyed with me, I think understandably. But as a trans activist, I was involved in UNISON's campaign for trans equality and done a lot of work up and down the country in my own time educating people on trans issues and building up an allies network. During that time, I met with, at the time, Annalisa Dodds, who was the Shadow Women and Equalities Minister. And we spoke quite a lot about trans rights and the Labour Party's stance on that. And she came across as very, very supportive at a time when Wes Streeting was saying things which were quite hostile, and Keir Starmer was not saying anything that was supportive. But I kind of held faith that they would do the right thing once they got into government. Unfortunately, though, once in government, they've actually done the work of the Tories for them. Not only have they not progressed trans people's rights in the UK, they've actually started dismantling them, which is really, really worrying. So they've shelved reform of the Gender Recognition Act to make that a more simplified process, as opposed to the current humiliating and bureaucratic process that it is. They've upheld the ban on puberty blockers for trans youth, which is a really alarming thing for young people especially. They've completely blocked any prescription of puberty blockers, even in private clinics, so it's just a no-go area now. They've fully supported the findings of the UK Supreme Court ruling and took the interpretation of that by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission as at face value and being up 100% correct and clear, they say, clear. Bridget Phillipson stated in Parliament that trans women like myself now should use men's facilities. It's a really hard thing for me to kind of get my head around that, because I do not have male genitalia. But I'm meant to go to a male toilet, and they cannot see any reason why I would be unsafe in that environment. And now the latest one is that they are introducing their own form of Section 28, whereas as opposed to discouraging schools and educators to talk about gay relationships, now they are discouraging schools from addressing issues of gender identity with young people. They're damaging trans youth, that's what they're doing. And I quite often hear people say, but you know, it's children, you know, they're going through a phase, it's a fad, etc., etc., etc. I was a child, you know, I wasn't born 63 years old. I was a child. As a child, I was trans, my identity was trans. And the failure of my family, my parents, my school, social services to recognize that in me ended up me being put in care until I was 16. It stopped my education from the age of 14 onwards. It took me until I was 40 to go to university. Every trans person was a trans child. Yeah. So if we want to continue doing the damage that was done to me as a child, then this is the trajectory that we're on. So where are the unions in all of this? Well, the unions really aren't anywhere in all of this, unfortunately. Some unions have made some statements. GMB probably is about the most strongest of them. And as a UNISON member and somebody who's been so heavily involved in their campaign, it's really, really disheartening for me that's happened. They're saying they still support trans rights, but when you ask them what they deem those rights to be, they can't articulate that, and they won't articulate that because they're too worried, they're too scared, they're scared of a legal challenge, which really worries me again, because if a trade union is scared of a legal challenge, then what is the point in its existence? Because we're there to challenge, are we not? Are we not there to put right the wrongs that governments and societies impose on people? That's one of our primary functions, isn't it? Because for me, you know, you can't pick and choose who's entitled to equality, can you? You know, it's a fundamental purpose of a trade union to make society fairer, more equitable for everybody. Everybody. And when I say everybody, that means my black comrades, my Muslim comrades, my Jewish comrades, my trans comrades, my gay comrades, everybody, absolutely everybody. Nobody should be left behind, because you can't build a better society if you're prepared to throw people under the bus. Now, given that the Labour Party were born from the trade union movement, I think it's high time that they were reminded of what their role is in equality, because they've completely forgot. I was just saying to Steve before there, when we hear the Labour Party talk now, they keep on talking about fighting for hard-working people, but they never use the words working class people anymore, do they? I don't know if other people have picked up on that. They always talk about hard-working people. Well, working class people are bloody hard-working people, and we don't get the rewards and the benefits that any of them get. So they need to remember that. So what does all this issues around trans people, how does it impact on trans people in their daily lives? Just to give you a bit of a snapshot, it's only been a couple of months since the UK Supreme Court ruling. The guidance from the EHRC was absolutely clear as mud. Basically, it was just designed to say trans women cannot access any women's space whatsoever, any women's service or any women's activity. At work, on day one, my chief exec popped into my office, which is really unusual for a chief exec to come to the branch secretary's office, because I'm the only one in my employer. And she wanted to chat with me about what they were looking into, and we are going to look into, she said, what this ruling means. But in the meantime, we're going to carry on as usual, hoping that nobody complains. But what if they do complain? Well, could you use the disabled toilets in the meantime? But I'm not disabled, and it's taken away a service from somebody that actually needs that service. I said, well, why don't you ask anybody who's gender critical to use the disabled toilets? Because in my mind, they're disabled, because they clearly don't have the ability to think fairly. So that didn't go down too well. So it's a problem in majority of employers. They don't know what to do with this because the guidance is so poor. This year, my employer didn't fly the Pride Progress flag during Pride Month. They put the old flag up, and they claimed because they didn't have planning permission to put up the new flag, because they were scared that somebody would complain. And actually, people already complained about the rainbow flag. So I can understand where they're coming from. They're now reviewing EDI posts at work, because they fear that there is going to come a backlash to say, why are we focusing so much on equality, diversity and inclusion? And that's a direct impact of this Labour government, because this Labour government has adopted what I believe is adopted conservative socialism, which is a very kind of ironic thing. But Blue Labour, I don't know if any of you heard of Blue Labour yet. They basically believe in supporting the economic classes. They believe, but by making people wealthy and making people rich, you take the problems of the world away, you take the problems of society away. But that just isn't true. So they're not interested in minority classes, minority groupings. They're not interested in us at all. We're just a hindrance for them on their bigger journey to getting everybody rich, which is just, it's quite simple, isn't it? It's not a real thing. It's not going to happen. In terms of trade unions going forward, I'm going to TUC Congress in September. There is one motion on that Congress agenda regarding trans people, and it is as strong as, well, it's not, as strong is the wrong word, there's no strength in it. It simply asks for a meeting with the Women and Equalities Minister to discuss trans rights. That's it, and that's the TUC. And that's how committed the trade union movement is to finding a way forward and fighting for the rights of trans people. It's absolutely abysmal. So I come here today really with a plea for you to use, to please keep this an issue in your unions, in your branches, in any of the social circles that you move, because we only make up 0.5% of the population. We can't take this fight on our own. We're talked over. We don't get a voice. It's always the voice of the people who speak against us that airs nationally. So we need people to talk about it on the ground level. And please pass the word that actually we are people, we're human beings, like everybody else, and we have to survive in this god-awful world as it is at times. Other times, though, it's absolutely beautiful and amazing. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello, everybody. My name's Stephen Bissett, and I'm a Birmingham refuse worker. So, last year in December, I believe, our employers basically came to us and said that they were going to get rid of a health and safety critical role called the Grade 3 role, which is in charge of reversing the trucks, and also dealing with live face-to-face problems. So, for example, if you've had a party and you've got a couple extra bin bags or something like that, which we all do every now and then, naturally that would be the person that you speak to. So yeah, they said that they were getting rid of the grade three, but that was coming with a pay cut from £6,000 to £8,000. This comes after last year we changed work times from 5 till 6, and that meant everybody across the board lost between £1,000 to £2,000. So to start the new year by losing a further £8,000, I mean, naturally, we was quite outraged by this. I mean, everybody's got bills to pay. Everybody's got, responsibilities or whatnot. So yeah, to start a new year with up to £10,000 losses. I mean, we turned around to Unite and we said, we're not signing this, we reject the offer, and we would like to go on strike. We started striking in January for 3 days, but then we saw that we wasn't really making an impact. Media as a whole, social media, journalists were basically making us out to be the bad guys. Oh, look at the bin men, they're asking for more money again. They're holding the city ransom, which were all lies. We were thugs, fighting with agency staff, which again wasn't true. I mean, we literally have reps and full-time employees who have kids that work for the agency. So you're not going to fight your children in the morning and then play happy families at the dinner table, are you? So yeah, once we strike 3 days and we saw that nothing was happening, we turned around to our union, Unite, and we said that we would like to reballot. Can everybody hear me? Okay, yeah, fantastic. So once we reballoted to jump on indefinite strike, that flew with 97%, I believe. So we started from March 10th till today. I believe it's been 130 days since then. Um, Immediately within the first week, I believe they said that there was about 40 tons of waste left in Birmingham City, which was not what we wanted to do. But again, we felt like we was backed up into a corner. Our livelihoods were at stake. Our lives were at stake, essentially. I mean, when you go to work, you fit your lifestyle around the wage that you get paid, whether you get paid 1,500 a month or you get paid £15,000 a month. You fit your lifestyle around how much you get paid. So, for anybody to take such a critical pay cut, I mean, £650. Let's be real, it's literally your rent money, your bill money, even your groceries for the month. I mean, when's the last time anybody here done a £20 weekly shop? Exactly. So we saw that obviously we were starting to make an impact. And then I think it was 2 months ago, our employers sent everybody a letter saying, "Oh, by the way, we're going to take between £8,000 to £10,000 off your drivers too." Initially, they told journalists that it was only 17 people per depot. Bearing in mind there's 100 drivers in each depot, so you do the maths. We kept fighting on till this day. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any resolve. And again, we're not holding the city ransom. I mean, majority of us, we live in the city. We're and we're not just bin men, refuse workers, sorry, because there's also women working there. So we're not just refuse workers. I mean, there's mothers, fathers, and let's be real. I mean, we're the people who pay into society. We're the ones who keep society functioning, keep it clean. Fortunately for myself, they kind of appointed me as speaker by accident. I honestly, the story was hilarious. Thank you. I actually turned up late to one when we was outside the council house, and the reps had told everybody not to do an interview. I turned up late, so I missed the whole speech. Saw a woman walking around. I asked a refuse worker, what does she want? They were like, oh, she wants to do an interview. Somebody else said there's a complete joke. Oh, you should go do an interview. And me, without missing a beat, I said, sweet. So I went and done the interview. I went and done the interview, got told off by a rep. The same rep that told me off 2 weeks later, I came and shook my hand and said, "You done a bloody great interview." So I was like, "Oh, well, thank you." And Since then, I've been fortunate enough to be invited to many different events. My first event was We Demand Change in London, where I found out that Birmingham refuse workers were literally the first domino in a long line of dominoes willing to fall, and it was all the working class that were being affected. Everywhere from doctors, teachers, even the police force, firefighters. I mean, these are not jobs that people are lining up to do. They're critical to society and to the country. I mean, kids already nowadays all want to become TikTokers and YouTubers and footballers. Nobody really wants to do jobs that contribute to society. Me as a refuse worker, I absolutely love my job. I've always wanted to do something that helps people, whether that be care work or well, I did want to become a policeman, but that changed once I saw a different side. But yeah, for me, the next best thing was to become a bin man. I mean, I mean, it's not a glamorous job. It's quite a dirty job, to be honest. But again, there's little things, seeing little kids at the windows waving at the trucks, little old ladies that, or even men that live alone, and the only form of contact is their bin man or even the postman, sort of thing. So yeah, I want to say thanks to unions as well, because let's be real, without unions, you'd either have to accept whatever offer your employer gives you or reject it. But with that rejection, you've no longer got a job. You've got to go get yourself another job. And unfortunately, it's not like the 60s where you can leave one job and get another job tomorrow. I mean, the demand for work is so high. I mean, it's like a stack of needles of in needles sort of thing. And yeah, trying to get a job is really hard. And our employers tried using the equal pay claim as an excuse. And I'm pretty sure that the equal pay claim was introduced to bring people's wages up, not down. So, I mean, they tried using the excuse as a dinner lady. So yeah, my literally, as I said, there was two ways that I'd saw that. One, it's two different jobs. A surgeon and a nurse and a porter don't get paid the same wage. I mean, they're two complete different jobs. Secondly, like I said, like I mentioned previously, equal pay was introduced to bring not just women's but anybody who's in the same role bring their wages up. So to bring anybody's wages down when we're all facing the cost of living crisis, where everything's constantly on the rise, from your groceries to your rent to your bills. Even your council tax. I mean, these people are not gonna be like, "Oh, it's all right. You've took an 8 grand cut. We'll give you a couple months to figure it out." No, they're gonna want their money. So yeah, it's up to us to utilize our voices, and yeah, don't believe that you're the only person that's in the fight. It may not affect you today, it may not be you today, but believe you me, it'll be you tomorrow. So thank you very much for hearing me speak, and thank you for having me in this lovely city.
So I'm not sure how I'm meant to follow that, but absolutely fantastic to see you all today. So I'm Dr. Becky Lavelle. I speak as an individual, but also as a national rep, because the BMA couldn't get rid of me if they tried. I'm part of one of the strongest groups of troublemakers in the UK right now, and now so are they. We are, as an association, pro-trans, pro-bin strikes. We recently voted our ARM to reaffirm our statements to condemn the genocide currently taking place in Palestine. So we will lobby the UK government to actively support the International Criminal Court, the ICC, and the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, in their investigations and prosecution of war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide, including holding accountable any medical professionals who have participated in or facilitated the torture or mistreatment of prisoners in Gaza. The BMA remains a proper trade union, and we are fighting for our pay, but we're also fighting for every patient in the country. So last week, when I was invited to come to this event, for the first time in a long time, I could immediately confirm that I was available to speak. I didn't have to check my overly complex, changeable and frankly inaccurate rota. I didn't have to read through my emails to ensure I hadn't signed up to some supposedly additional training course that would actually turn out to be mandated evidence for my annual review of progression. That would also cost £700, by the way. I actually didn't even have to check my kitchen calendar, upon which my wife lovingly pencils in all of the real life admin that I overlook and really have to get done on particular dates. I didn't have to do all of that because today is the 26th of July. It's a strike day, and I'm a resident doctor. So this talk is meant to be about struggles at work. I'm not at work right now, but as I'm sure anyone here who works in the NHS or the emergency services can attest, sometimes our struggles are not quite like the typical ones that many workers face. So doctors are constantly confronted with the extremes of the human condition. We try to soothe extremely unwell children. We help the aggressive man with dementia who doesn't know his own strength. We might be explaining to the otherwise fit 40-year-old woman who's dying of cancer that although we can't save her life, we do need to perform another surgery. These and many more are simply part of the job and parts that all doctors have readily signed up for. I truly believe that I have the best job in the world, and I can't ever see doing something that doesn't involve patient care in the future. It's emotionally exhausting work. It carries a high cognitive load, long hours that are physically draining and socially taxing. It requires perfect dexterity and a half-decent bedside manner. Nobody gets into medicine for the money. If we wanted a career for money, we'd easily get into city jobs. We could do finance, banking, or politics. We're more than smart enough to take advantage of less privileged people in the business or the property world. But instead, we choose to care. Although I'm personally from a working class background, I grew up in Stockport, okay? It's true that only 5 to 10% of medical students come from normal state schools, okay? So from that, we can reasonably assume that the population of workers that are on strike today are not necessarily having to worry about paying their bills. They're certainly not used to it. And really what they want to do is focus on their craft. So when 50,000 of these doctors vote together to seemingly abandon their patients, to leave their workplaces and stand on a picket line demanding more pay, you can understand why we get a little bit defensive at being accused of greed and malice by otherwise quite overtly corrupt authorities. So the likes of the supposedly pro-worker government MPs telling us that we hold our patients in disdain and that by striking we are willfully bringing them to harm, it's not only hurtful, but it's absolute nonsense. So resident doctors are striking to bring our pay that has radically deteriorated over the last 17 years back up to 2008 levels, which means a fully qualified doctor would go from earning £17.56 an hour to being paid £22.67 an hour. That's less than £23 and still less than our assistants who earn £24 an hour and only do 2 years of training. All of this on the back of decline of respect for our profession, a once-in-a-century pandemic, and a deterioration in working conditions to those that wouldn't be tolerated by other public sector workers or indeed by the people forcing them upon us. I can say with confidence that my employers hate me. And I don't just mean the NHS machinery, which is built at all times to extract maximum output from all staff while barely holding together this necessary service. I mean specifically they hate me, Becky effing Lavelle, okay? Because I am a union rep who fights every day to enforce our agreed upon national contract, our locally arranged policies, and honestly, basic human rights. To put it into perspective, were I at work today as an experienced resident doctor, I actually started training in 2011, okay? I'm halfway through an intensive program of training to become a consultant in obstetrics and gynecology. I'd be working a meant-to-be 13-hour shift, covering all patients on a labour ward, in emergency theatres, the antenatal ward, the antenatal day unit, and maternity triage, lots of areas of the hospital, with just the direct assistance of a relatively newly qualified doctor who may have never even worked in obstetrics and gynae before. I can call my consultant for help, but they'll be in clinic, they'll be in theatre. But if I need, they will come. And in maternity, I can at least say they will come within 20 minutes. I arrive every day to work 15 to 30 minutes early, unpaid, to see any post-op patients from the day before and get changed into my scrubs. I'd be at the beck and call of a bleep that comes from the 80s, relentless and shrill. I hear that noise in my dreams. I won't have a designated workspace, much less a chair to sit upon. At 35 years old, and well into my career, I'll perch against a large printer to scribble my important handover notes that help me make life and death decisions, much like many of my resident doctor colleagues across the country. It's even become a bit of a joke. If you go on Twitter, if you must, there is an account called Toxic Bin Seat, because it's become such a common meme amongst doctors that we make jokes about it, because that's how you cope with struggle. After handover, we do ward round. We actually perform 2 ward rounds a day in maternity, even at the weekends. So after seeing any really sick patients who always come first, the morning kicks off quickly with me reviewing all of the birthing people on labour ward. Every single one with a complex plan, with discussion, possibly having one of the most important days of their lives. These are the patients whose well-being can most quickly switch from absolutely fine, this is fantastic, to shit hitting the fan. And I want them to at least see my face before I'm called in there in an emergency to what could be the worst day of their life. Then, of course, I carry on and I go and see the semi-routine patients, those with odd blood pressures, or somebody who's not sure if they want to try iron for their absolutely raging anemia, or wants to talk about vaccines, for fuck's sake, take the vaccines. They might have had unexpected and heartbreaking scan results, life-changing conversations, people who are coming in with scary symptoms, who are confused or terrified of childbirth. All the time, complicated conversations, decisions, all the time, high pressure stakes. I probably won't get time for lunch. I usually drink a protein shake, actually, because I can do that walking between the labour ward and theatre. But I also might not get a break anyway, because patients are always waiting. And this one looks really sick, a midwife would say. She's bleeding, actually, and we need you to come now and assess. A doctor can't just turn down or delay a review. There is no, that's not my job, or have you asked another person? Because responsibility for care is always my job, and there is no other person. It's not unusual for me to personally save 6 or 7 or 8 lives in a single shift. I really hope they're even numbers. And there's absolutely no room for mistakes or even brief lapses in concentration. When you're prescribing exactly the right amount of poison for a person, when you are cutting through their body with a scalpel to save them or the being they treasure above all others, and developing permanent and disabling injuries, brain damage, or even death. A category 1 emergency C-section, delivering a baby by an emergency surgery, should ideally be performed within 12 to 16 minutes. Once called into the room, diagnosing the trace, explaining to the patient, finally in theatre, my heart's racing. They've got anaesthetic on board now. My knife to skin to baby time averages at 2 minutes. So my shift would supposedly end about 8:30 in the evening. That's when handover is again. But actually, I'd still be in the hospital over an hour later because I have documentation to do. I have to catch up on that, and it must be completed today. Or the CQC will judge my unit, and I'll probably have to do some new paperwork that they bring in to improve things. And you know what? I probably would have done the exact same thing yesterday. And I would also be doing the same thing tomorrow. That's how my shifts have worked out this week. As a resident doctor, a registrar, I would be earning less doing this 13-hour shift than if I'd, instead of going to medical school, if I'd learned a trade, if I'd learned technical skills, or if I'd spent the last 18 years working my way up through the management structure of a budget supermarket. As you can tell, there is a lot broken with medical work and training in this country. If staff are the fabric holding the NHS together, we're now threadbare. We're overstretched and we're overworked, and we're more than pulling apart at the seams. The wins I have made in my workplace include the basics of doctors being allowed into staff rooms to store their lunch, of fighting for even a simple locker in a building where we spend 48 to 60 hours a week. I've wrestled with getting doctors their annual leave for their own weddings, for the birth of their children, and for parents' funerals. I fought to have an entire group of doctors who are vulnerable to exploitation, those who graduated overseas, to get them promoted to a pay grade that was fitting of their skills and experience, rather than reduced by tens of thousands of pounds, simply because the trust had pushed for the very lowest salaries that they could legally pay a doctor, because the foreign doctors didn't know better, and they were now too afraid to ask because they thought their visas would be affected. So, before the pay dispute, back in 2021, fully qualified doctors were only paid £14 an hour. Most have £80,000 to £100,000 of debt. Thank you, coalition government. Something that proves that compromise always leaves everyone disappointed. But after 5 or 6 or more years of university, these doctors, graduating now, are randomly allocated across the country. These allocations dictate not only what specialty they will work in, but where they will have to move to uproot their entire lives and that of their families for the next likely decade of their life. Doctors no longer have control of their careers, their location, or the way their lives will progress. After 2 years of being a doctor, there's no longer a guarantee of a job. We, from August, will have many, many doctors unemployed in this country. Doctors who are trained, who are experienced, who are safe. The days of job security for doctors are gone. And we need more doctors. Because of the above, we're actually hemorrhaging 20,000 doctors a year in the UK, and we need to stem that flow. So in just 2023, and it feels like it's been a long 2 years, I became part of a grassroots movement that has reinvigorated the BMA. It's turned into undoubtedly one of the most powerful and active trade unions in the UK. The reps of the Doctors' Vote movement have driven up membership by tens of thousands. set up entire WhatsApp communication networks and support systems, empowering doctors with information on their contracts, unifying them, negotiating for their rights, and getting them to speak with a singular, democratically elected voice. And we use it to shout loudly. The UK Resident Doctors Committee, of which I am a member, has a stronger mandate and stronger grassroots support head for head than our country's government. Our recent ballot mandate passed with over 90% of those voting in favour of taking industrial action. And these are doctors. We had a turnout of 55%, our fourth easily passed mandate in this lengthy dispute, and one that any government would bite your hand off to call their own. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but when you read the articles on doctor strikes, the savage exposés, and hear the hysterical ranting of supposedly neutral BBC presenters, I want you all to know the doctors really have stood together on this. Collective action has got us to where we are, starting with a small group of enthusiastic and committed activists, and turned basically one of the crustiest and most institutionally established trade unions into what I hope is an example for us all. The struggle is real, but the battles can be won. I'm Becky fucking Lavelle, and I ask you all to support the campaign for full pay restoration. Thank you.